Welcome back to the RLR podcast, which, as you can tell, has been newly improved for 2021. I'm Nick, that's Matt, and boy, do we have an episode for you guys this week. How are you, Matt?
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
I'm doing good. Happy New Year to everybody.
It's
Gone is 2020, and let's hope 2021 is, frankly, a lot better. There's not really low expectations for 2021, just to be better than 2020. That's all it has to do, and I'm hoping it will be better, frankly.
As do I. As do
To that point, I
I.
mean, we've got a lot of stuff. Hopefully planned. We can revamp some of the stuff that we had planned for 2020 podcasts and Redline Resorts. Non-podcast specific. Obviously, right, Nick. Gonna plan new stuff for new content. The podcast
Yeah.
has received an update, so we're
Um,
gonna definitely
yeah.
try to bring some new stuff here for the new year.
I think on top of this podcast update, we definitely want to bring more content to the YouTube channel, which will
Mm-hmm.
be very interesting as we dive deeper into this year and some content, and hopefully you guys should be seeing some stuff.
Yeah, hopefully get a little more freedom in our respective, countries and states, countries, whatever, and that'll allow us to kind of, get back to what is the new normal, safely, of course, and yeah, I mean, open up some opportunities here for a lot of new content. So, yeah,
Absolutely. So with that, I think we definitely need to touch base on Elon Musk. And on top of the Falcon 9 making its
another launch.
Another successful launch, another satellite deployed, Elon Musk is also now the richest person in the world, passing Jeff Bezos.
Which I would have to say, I'm actually kind of, I don't know about you, Nick, I'm kind of surprised about, hit it here quick and recharge. I was frankly surprised when I saw the news because the behemoth that is Amazon, I mean, and, everything that goes into Amazon is, because those who may not know, Amazon just isn't just, Amazon and Amazon Prime. There's a lot of other stuff they do that is frankly pretty incredible. And, like their web services platform is pretty awesome when you get into it. And I'm kind of surprised, frankly.
Well, not to mention they own one of the largest streaming platforms, Twitch,
Yeah, and I mean, I've
amongst
seen.
Audible and everything else, and Prime Video with their new content this year.
And I've seen a lot of reports. I mean, this isn't a dig to. I'm not digging Musk for his achievement, right? I think it's well deserved, frankly, the amount of work that guy puts in. But I've seen. I don't know about you. I've seen a lot of articles and a lot of stuff come across my news feeds on various platforms lately that like just appalling, frankly, build quality in Teslas and service repair claims, and it just more some evidence that their quality and safety rating stuff is gone downhill drastically, like we've already talked about, right? But to that point, again, not a dig on Musk because he's I like his work ethic, frankly, because I think I don't know who added him in the tweet with some news, of course, news source, basically saying what, that he was the new richest person in the world. And I think he said something to the effect of, "Oh, cool, all right, back to work."
Yeah,
So,
essentially, but that's his work
I mean,
ethic. I mean,
which I,
that's
I frankly and just bowed down to the fact that there's the thing that's well known when he sold PayPal or I think something like that. He put how many millions that he got from that sale. He put most of it into Tesla, some into SpaceX, and something else, and he quote borrowed money for rent. Like the guts that it takes to just continually grind and how brilliant he is. Yeah, despite whatever issues Tesla or anybody else might have, nothing but admiration and respect for him and a well-deserved congratulations, frankly. It's awesome.
absolutely. I absolutely agree.
So being one way to bring us something here in recharge as well. We saw some mule shots of, again, no surprise, Porsche. Like, it's always going to be something Porsche with us, right? No surprise. We've been seeing some mule shots, and I think we're expecting an end of January release for the new 992 generation GT3, and which I'm excited for. But thoughts on the rear wing of that, at least in the
Okay,
mule car. What,
so
what, what
first, it should be noted for those of you who have not seen the mule shot photos, that is a press car underneath. They covered it up and they painted. Well, essentially, they wrapped
they
it in
wrapped it with
black.
black, which
If you
makes
notice
sense.
in the open door shots, it is also the same color blue as the other 992 GT3 that was shown in the Chris Harris Top Gear
Hmm.
video the end of
Still not in
November
full.
last year. Still
Yeah,
not
still
in
not in
full.
full, but that is, yeah, it seems like they were, like you said, trying to hide stuff on purpose because technically it hasn't, been fully released yet. And I think the best that we could find, end of this month, I think should be full, release to the world. So
Yes. Now that being said,
that rear wing though, how
the
Senna
rear the
like?
rear it's very Senna like. For those, it's very McLaren, very I almost called it the McSenna, but um, which it's not far off. But anyway, it is it's very McLaren. It's very Senna.
I
I
think we share the
understand the
same thoughts
purpose
here,
of it.
right? It's
I
I think it's electric too, based on what I can find. So much,
it
I'm
is.
assuming much like how for those who may not know, the Senna's ring kind of looks like it's a horizontal wing being suspended on the rear end of the car. And as you take corners, of course, it has rear wheel steering, whatever. That wing essentially tilts for maximum downforce as you're taking corners on a track. This one looks electric, so I would assume it might do something like that. I'm not gonna go so far as like full Senna tilting kind of thing, but I think what I can find, it's electric, so it's got maybe some tricks up its sleeve. And I
I
think
think it definitely will
we
have
have
some
the
tricks up
same
its
thoughts
sleeve.
on it,
Yes.
correct?
I think it looks absolutely awful in the black wrap that they did for with the electrics, because they did mention that the electrics were fully deployed
Hmm.
on that wing for the press shots.
I
Um,
concur with that statement. It looks awful,
I think it looks awful.
awful.
However, the press shots that I've seen of the car that Chris Harris was shown, it tells a completely different story, and I actually don't. I'm not gonna go. I think you and I can echo this statement
Hmm.
between each other. We're not gonna go as far as to say that it is a beautiful wing, but
Hmm.
it doesn't look that bad when it's painted the color of the car and it's actually matched the way it should be.
Yeah, it was interesting that essentially the support pieces and the ends of it of the wing are essentially look like they're black, so the other body color with like trim pieces and the diffuser and stuff like that. And the actual horizontal wing itself, technically, I guess it's all the wing, right? But the horizontal bar was body color matched. The very bright, blue, kind of like a sky
Which
kind of
is a
blue
bit of a
color.
difference from the previous GT3s where they had a body matched end cap and then the wing
Yeah.
itself was
And I gotta
carbon
say,
fiber.
this color scheme compared to the old one, I like, the like obviously there's different parts that contrast on this one. I'll go so far as to say is I like it. I don't love it yet,
I
but I like
I
it. But here's the
do like
interesting
it when
thing.
it's color matched to the car, and I don't know how it's gonna look when they have an actually black car. If it's gonna
Exactly.
look
I
gaudy
don't think
like
I
that.
like that. But here's the thing. I think we're talking about this when the Zero One, or for folks outside of the U.S., ZR1 Corvette first came out. It had, the gigantic front end with huge, like gaping mouths for the radiators, right? Like 17 or something. The wing was huge and massive, and it was the car. I think one of the cars that you looked at and you knew you shouldn't like it, but you kind of do. And to be honest, even being a Corvette fan for my entire, childhood, that's my love for Corvette started when I was like I think 10 or 12 years old. Um, but I didn't like it at all, and you can attest to this, like, as one of the people who's closest to me, right? I did not like it. You know
No,
that,
we
but
were we were at the Chicago Auto Show, and
it
you
grew
walked
on me,
in. Yeah, you walked
and
in
yeah,
not liking that car and walked out being a fan.
yeah. It When I saw it in person, and of course over time, I had kind of started to warm up to it, but until I saw it in person, yeah, I liked it, and I think I feel the same way starting out here. I don't like how that rear wing looks, at least, full one, all one color. I think it's okay. I like it ish the way it is in the press car with the different contrast points. And who knows, if I ever get so fortunate to see one in real life, I might end up loving it. But I feel the same way. I think I'll come to love it. But for now, not quite sold on it just yet. It's okay. I like it a little bit,
Yeah,
assuming it's not all black or all, I would assume, of course, we've seen two versions, two tone blue and black, and one all black. I would
Correct.
assume I don't like the all black. Maybe it looks better in a lighter color, like a crazy yellow or a white or a silver or something like that.
I think it's also gonna. I
I still
personally
think it
think it's
look.
gonna look great in the guards red, but
I think, and I gotta say, if that whole rear wing, to put my personal stamp on it, if that I gotta say right now, if I see the whole rear wing assembly all one color, I think no matter the color, I don't think it'll look good. I think it has to be the contrast of the
yeah,
support arms and the end caps, and yeah, but we'll see, right? We haven't even seen technically a full release of the car yet, so
right.
that should be
So
coming in the
we
end
can
of this
only
month.
speculate on that
Yeah.
from that point.
But
So
news on maybe moving on there and recharge. A couple more things here. Some Boeing 737. I mean, Boeing news in general, given there's some interesting things going on in I think Indonesia right now again, but
that's a whole different, and I can get into that, but that's a whole different story if you want to get into that.
yeah, but we'll save that maybe paddock chat if we need some extra. But 737 Max has been I think performing well so far based on preliminary tests and flights, right?
Yeah, I mean there was the issue with the Air Canada having some
Mm.
uh,
Yeah, but that was
general
unrelated to the
maintenance.
previous issue. I mean,
It was unrelated to the
right.
previous issue, and it ended up being that it was a maintenance issue. So with that being said, that the 737 Max flights are coming back with good results.
Hmm.
Boeing is getting their butts handed to them by the federal government as far as having to
Oh yeah,
pay massive
was it like
amounts of fines.
2 billion, something like that?
2.5, yeah.
2.5 billion, but they also don't have, essentially don't go to trial. They waive their right to a trial. And though for those who might not, might understand, I guess even the trial system, whatever that be in the U.S. real quick, right? Essentially, they pay all these fines and like public admission. It goes on record that they admit to what has happened and they didn't quote unquote out, which is rare, frankly, for a person, let alone a company. Most people plead not guilty, I think, even if they are, in a trial. But they quote waive their right to a trial as part of that $2 billion fine, right? And that means Boeing essentially can't go to court and try to get out and fight and get out of the charges. They fully admit to
Right.
them. So, and I think for me, when I heard that, I actually respect to them. I mean, frankly, that obviously, I still don't think 2.5 billion in the grand scheme of things for Boeing is going to be that big of a deal. But the fact that part
Not
of
when
that
we're giving
deal,
them billions of dollars in defense funds, but
yeah, and part of that though is like they admit to the wrongdoing.
so
Not even just waiving the right to the trial, but I'm happy right now, frankly, with what's going on. I'm also happy to see the 737 Max doing well thus far in its second wind.
I am too. I'm excited to see that it's doing well. I still want to wait a little bit. That
I would
and
agree.
that it has absolutely nothing to do with the fact of whether or not the plane is safe. At this point, it's just a mental game, and I think most of the American
Hmm.
populace is playing the same thing.
Yep.
What is not helping?
Time will tell.
Yeah, what is not helping are things like the um that crash off the coast of the
I think it's Indonesia.
I believe
I
it's
feel
somewhere.
like I see some new
It's
things every day.
yeah.
Wasn't that wasn't a 737 though?
It was 737. It was not a Max. So here's what people.
Oh, then
Here's
I
something
think
that
I
I'm
read
going to touch on
wrong.
very quickly, and if we
What's
have
going on?
time, we'll dive back into this in Paddock Chat. But
I read some wrong
um,
articles then, man. That I didn't think it was a 737 because the
no,
one I was reading didn't say it was.
a lot of people. So here's the thing: a lot of people were avoiding saying that it was a 737 because they knew the general population would not be able to understand the difference between the Max
And a
and the
737.
737
Yeah.
500 Classic that went down. We're talking about a
Mm.
26-year-old airframe, which is not old for an airframe,
Mhm.
but if it is improperly maintained, as
Then it's old.
this airline has the worst safety rating in the world currently.
Yeah.
And it's all based on maintenance. If you maintain the aircraft, it's not
Yep.
Boeing's fault that this plane crashed. It is
Hmm.
entirely, and I would stake my reputation on the fact this is not a Boeing issue. This is not a 737 issue. The only thing that this plane shared with the
This isn't
737 is the
airline
name.
specific. Yeah, it's an airline specific
Yes.
issue, and from what I understand, any kind of aviation, platform, whether it be, you know, uh, winged, an airline, or any even small plane, large plane, like even helicopters, there's very detailed maintenance that has to go on, and tracking, ways to that is tracked and written down and maintained. And yes, it's a lot of work, and we've seen it in the past where some airlines, even ones in the U.S., I think, I don't have examples, but I think I remember reading about years ago. Sometimes, the people or airlines or companies, whatever, skirt those rules to get planes back in service quicker or save costs. Because it's one thing to buy a plane, no matter how much it costs, but there's a lot of money and effort that goes into
Well,
maintaining that as a safe flying platform. So,
well, in addition to that, every time you have to delay a flight based on maintenance concerns, you
hmm
have upset customers and you
and
have to
how
pay
much
for
money were you
hotels.
technically losing? I mean,
And I
yeah,
understand that. I've
it's
been
still no
on
excuse,
I've
right?
been on
So,
flights that have gotten canceled based on maintenance issues.
mhm.
I was on a flight from
Oh,
da-
yeah, I
Dallas back to Chicago. I remember I was texting you from
mhm,
DFW, being like,
yeah.
"Hey, it's now 1 o'clock in the morning and we
Not
still
gonna be
haven't
back
taken
in time.
off."
Well, I can't remember where I was going. That's happened to me once where we were boarding a plane, and I think I found out later that it was maintenance issues that led to where the problems were. Of course, nothing, no specifics I couldn't find, but the one time I've ever actually had a hiccup, as I'll call it, when flying an airline. I was a United jet. We were flying. Again, I can't remember, but we boarded the plane, sat down, everything was going according to plan. Then all of a sudden, we were essentially told to get our bags and deboard the plane, and we were waiting in the airport for like 3 or 4 hours for another aircraft to come and essentially pick us up and resume the flight because they had engine issues, and I guess later it was deemed that it was because of maintenance. And again, never knew exactly what happened, but it's just to goes
And
to show that it can happen. Like it
that's
shouldn't
not to say
happen.
that that's because it was a United flight either. I know you mentioned that
Yeah,
yours was United. I'm
yeah.
gonna choose not to say mine, just because
Like, I mean, personally, I prefer, from American Airlines, again, being not the best in the world, any of them, frankly. I flew United since I was a child, and ever since I had a choice in the line, the company that I flew with, I've had a little bit better experience so far, bet with American Airlines than United. That's not to say United's, terrible. It is what it is, but
United has a lot of bad press, just as Boeing has a lot of bad press.
to
I
that
really
point.
haven't had. I've only had one truly bad experience, and
Mhm.
again, that was not the airline's fault. That was
Yeah.
essentially
Yeah.
the airport not having the correct de-icing fluid.
Well, and to
So
this point, like, with the 737 Max second wind of, its second go around is
it's
going
going to
well
take a
thus far.
long time for
It,
customers and
yep.
consumers to be comfortable flying on this plane. But
But it's starting out well. So,
ultimately, as there's no news will become good news.
hmm
And
especially.
I know the phrase going around right now is if it's Boeing, I ain't going. That should not be the case. The 737 platform has been around since God, I want to say late 60s, early 70s. It is
And the way I look at it now, I mean, what, if it's Boeing, I ain't going. And then there's Airbus and Scarebus. I've never truly actually heard a
they're
misnomer for
essentially marketing
Boeing.
terms.
I mean, to this point though, like I've never actually heard something like I've heard the term scare bus for all the time growing up, right? When from my my very old grandpa who would never fly on an Airbus because he's all American everything that generation, right? And to that point, when I look at it, it just goes to show that even Boeing's not perfect, and time will tell. A lot of time will tell, but it's starting out about I think about as well as it can be thus far. So despite the recent headlines with that Boeing was, of course, back in for unrelated 737 Max instances. So
Well, and not to mention that again, the
not
737
going to.
platform has been around forever, and the 737 itself. So the 737 Max, just to make it clear, the 737 Max and the 737 500 Classic that went down um, on it was either yesterday or Friday.
I think it was
Uh,
Friday.
Could have been Friday. I very well could have been yesterday. My days are
Mhm.
starting to blend together with this crazy New Year. But
Yeah, needless to say, here in the
the
States.
only thing that those two planes share with one another
Hmm.
is the namesake. They
Yep.
are a completely different airframe, different engines, different electronics. If you tried to make a 737-500 crash like the Max, you wouldn't be able to because there's no such thing as the sensors that were making the Max issues happen
Hmm.
on that plane. So
It's a different
to
aircraft.
say that it's another Boeing issue, Boeing's in trouble, Boeing's gonna crash, all these things. It's not Boeing. In this
I
case,
think,
I'm
yeah.
betting to I'm willing to bet my reputation that this is a maintenance issue and a pilot failure versus a
Hmm.
Boeing issue. It just
Well,
happened to be a
would you
Boeing, and it
say?
happened to be that the 737 is the most popular plane up until 2 years ago. So, of course, it's going to be disproportionate that more incidences happen with that when
Hmm.
there's 50 times that number of, or 50 times that nameplate in the market.
I think put it this way. I mean, is for me, if I were to take a flight right now on a Boeing product, you know, I would. I might. I'm not yet ready to fly on a 737 Max. And again, I think we talked about that. I think even last episode of the podcast, where time will tell. We're going to see what happens, but whatever. I would fly on another. In I guess in the states here, right? Maybe obvious. I would fly on another Boeing product, no problem. I would walk onto that
Heck,
aircraft
put me on
without.
a 737-800.
Yep.
Like the previous generation. I will walk on that
Yeah.
plane all day, and I know that
So
it's gonna. I mean, those things are tried and true.
yeah. At that point, I mean, again, not to say that I wouldn't have confidence in the max, but again, time will tell. Kind of like the COVID vaccine, right? Well, it's looking forward to getting, whenever I can get in line for my first part of it, but still also simultaneously just seeing what happens, with the rollouts and stuff like that. So
Sure.
unrelated, but maybe the last thing and retry and try going a little long would be the news updates in F1. I mean, there's a couple that come to mind, and for me would be Alex Albon will be participating in DTM racing, which would be cool to
Yes,
see him
saw that.
demonstrate his talents. Maybe, finally we're getting Alex has a way to continually show that he can get better, evolve, and demonstrate his talents, not just sitting in the sidelines for F1. And he's by no means the first F1 driver to participate in DTM throughout the years, frankly, at that point. And Sir Hamilton has some interesting stuff going on, which I
Well,
think
hold
we'll
on.
hit a little bit later on. Yeah, not yet,
We'll hit that next.
but
I
that's the
did want to
biggest thing
say
I've
that
seen.
Aston Martin is finally an official team and has achieved official meme status based on their horrible Instagram
Mess of an
post.
Instagram post. I
With
am a MF1MA.
what?
How'd that go?
Something like
I'm
that.
pretty sure that's what they said, right?
I'm pretty sure that's what they meant.
Hey,
Couldn't
it was
possibly
bad.
be
I'm actually gonna go
IMF1.
pull it up
It's
right now.
or we are F1.
I'm gonna go pull it up right now and see if I can't like. I'm assuming it's still there, and I get what they were trying to do. It just essentially they were trying to use their Instagram posts to create a much larger image with individual posts. And to that point, let me see if I can pull it up here. You know what? I might not. I'm not. I might be a little crazy from time to time. I don't think I'm crazy right now because I don't see it. I mean, there's still pictures loading. I don't see it on.
Yeah, they also have a. They
Did they take
finally
it
have a. Well, they could have with all the backlash that people were giving him.
No, did they take it down? Darn it. I think they actually took it down. No, they
Well,
took it all down.
I
Darn it.
also don't blame them if they took it down since they have a new presenting sponsor. Did you see that?
I did not.
Cognizant.
I did not see that.
Yes.
But now I do. I'm looking at the second to last post from them. Interesting. Gotta say, I'm looking at that post where it has Cognizant's name on the Aston Martin Formula One team. It's kind of cool to see the name Aston Martin and Formula One team again.
I know.
I mean, now I'm just waiting for. I mean, Porsche can get back. Could you imagine Porsche? What if they got an F1? I mean, come on, man. That's what I'm waiting for.
If only they went through that engine that they decided. I would be okay with them being an engine designer. And I'm
Hmm.
sure Red Bull probably would too.
Probably, because
Yeah.
Red Bull has no title sponsor for this new season. But
Uh,
I think a couple other news stories going on. I mean, obviously, we know that Haas I think is still running with Schumacher and Mazepin as their drivers for the upcoming season. I mean, I think they're getting a lot of backlash, and their team, the Haas team name, because of Mazepin, is not really favorable at all right now. I'm in F1, and with how that probably goes
amongst
without saying.
a wide variety of other reasons that Haas has been criticized lately.
Yeah,
Mazepin is not the
yeah,
Mazepin's
not
kind
the
of been the
image they
crutch in
need
that.
right now. I think obviously I saw some articles, going on that there's new changes for F1 this year as an organization, not just individual teams, right? Let me see, there's rules and regulations changes, new tires. Let me see if I can pull up some of the big hit changes right now. Let
Yeah,
me
so
see.
I'm just
So there's
looking just
changes
to.
to the car's floors. I'm seeing here.
Yep.
So, but essentially, I guess it's a different floor shape, so that'll obviously influence aerodynamics and drivability of cars and speeds they can reach and so on. Rear brake duct winglets will be shortened, so again that'll change. I think even cooling a little bit. For right, would that not? Uh, oh,
Yeah.
that'll change. That'll change effect primarily to downforce with the wheels. So
Yeah, I would say more
um,
downforce than.
diffuser fences are being cut down. Cost caps, that's probably the biggest one, where there's going to be a, was it, $145 million cap, I think, for this year. That would be reduced to 140 million cap per team in 2022, and then down to 135 million in 2023. So that's kind of a big thing because in 2021 is essentially the F1's first ever cost cap. So that's a big deal. That, obviously, costs for an F1 team are not just R&D or the facilities and travel and the cars and multiple power units and salaries, but driver salaries. I mean, it's everything. So all in cost caps now. That's huge. Um, One thing I don't yet understand is a new sliding scale for aerodynamic testing. I have not yet read enough about that to even have an opinion yet. Minimum weights for cars and power units, clamping down on copying parts. So some teams sometimes, work together to create technology, and copying parts apparently was a big issue. So there's a thing. Pirelli has new compounds that they're bringing, which, as we talked about, F1 drivers are not happy about because essentially I think they're harder tires and they don't want that. So, and the one that I probably hate the most, Nick, is the DOS is banned, which I think is really dumb. But Mercedes dual axis steering system. So
Yeah.
essentially, for those who might not know, is where this past year Hamilton and Bottas could, their steering column and the wheel in a sense essentially functioned in like a Z axis almost. They could push it in, I think, and that would change essentially the angle of the tires on a straight where they'd be angled in for better grip and performance going around corners. They would be more straight vertical going down a straight to more better open speed and also tire management. So that was a new, I think, an awesome new innovation brought forth by Mercedes for this year. And I mean, it's now banned, which I think is, I'm not happy about it, frankly. I think, why stifle, and what's the word? Stifle, not engineering, but improvement. What's the word I'm thinking of? Like advancement? Can't think of the word.
Yeah. Well, it's not advancement, but more. Now you've got me blanking on the word too. Anyway,
Technological like basically
the
updating, like finding new cool technological things. And I mean that's what motorsport is for, like
it's engineering and
innovation.
it's innovate. There
Innovation,
you go.
that's the word. Ha, see, and I knew the word innovate. Like that's what F1 and that's what racing is for. Like That's how we have, what, disc brakes and ABS and like all kinds of stuff on our, road going cars. I mean, come on. So
Well, and a lot of
there's
hybrid
good things about
technology has come out of F1. I mean,
it. Yeah.
it's
Yeah. There's a lot
yeah.
of small changes. And probably the biggest one, you know, and maybe F1 is now allowing more, maybe to end on a higher. I think they're allowing more quote unquote green materials like bamboo. Usually F1's FIA is pretty stringent on the materials that can be used because for safety reasons or
Well,
whatever.
yeah.
But
If anything,
apparently,
look at the Grosjean situation of
yeah, but to that point, I think they're quote unquote green lighting, for new materials that are for flax, hemp, linen, cotton, and bamboo. So don't know if teams will actually use them
hmm,
or if they do, how, but like that's a good thing. Those are more green materials, more sustainable than maybe, say carbon fiber or whatever. I mean, I'm not saying that that's going to replace, the survival cell or the halo or
right.
structural pieces, but we'll see. There's small changes and big changes abound in the new season. So hey, it could. I would, like I said a couple episodes ago, man. I would love to be proven wrong that this won't just be a boring placeholder season of more of the same. I would love to be proven wrong and just see some really weird things happen again this year,
Okay.
frankly. So we'll see. But
All right. So
on
with that,
with
I
that,
did. We have a new transition for those watching and for those listening. Um, as we transition into our new segment, Sir Lewis Hamilton Watch.
Oh man, that feels good.
If for those of you who are unaware, that was Lewis Hamilton himself being very excited.
because we talk about them enough, frankly.
Yes. So we do actually have a new segment that we are calling
Sir Hamilton watch.
Sir Hamilton Watch or Sir Lewis Hamilton Watch. So speaking of that, we should probably introduce why we're saying Sir Hamilton.
He's been officially. I think we've referenced it a while ago.
We did reference it at the end of our F1
Yeah,
or
he's
F1 recap.
officially knighted. So you had a great joke that you told me the other day.
Yeah. So I cannot take full responsibility for it. That did come from the Formula Dank subreddit. Now, what that is now we have 3 nobilities on the grid. We have Sir Lewis Hamilton, Sir Bastian Vettel, and Sir Gio Perez. So
3 sirs on the grid this next year.
there are three sirs, 3 nobilities on the grid.
Anyway, I mean, so one of those 3 people actually has been for real knighted, and again,
Yes.
congratulations to Lewis on I think in part deserving for the icon he is and steps and the voice he has found in this season.
And he has brought viewership, at least American viewership, back to F1 with all
One
the
could say
political
he's doing
landscape.
potentially for F1 what Tiger Woods and has done for golf, and what Jeff Gordon did for NASCAR. I mean, bringing the viewership in. I mean, it's a big thing. I mean, heck, I watched Lewis Hamilton before he was a sir. I watched Sir Lewis Hamilton's interview on, I think, the Stephen Colbert Show at night, and I gotta say, I was shocked in a good way.
He's
Like,
extremely well spoken.
yeah, there's an F1 driver interview, and like clearly Colbert didn't quite know as much as like one might, even for being probably fed information
Well, he's
about
not
him.
crofty.
But I mean, to the same point, I was thoroughly impressed and surprised that there's, of course, it would be Sir Hamilton, right? But at the same point, there's an F1 driver having an interview on a popular American nightly TV show.
A nighttime
cool.
talk show, which is, it's very cool. And
so
as much as we like to say that Sir Lewis is a bit of a child when it comes to his racing radio chatter.
Everyone has their drawbacks and positives. So, and he's not without his, but I also can't promise that I'll always call him sir. I might just forget. So,
it'll take some getting used to. But he, at this point, as a driver, he has earned his title. His 7-time world championships.
Voted by drivers this year as the number 1 driver of the season, I think. So.
Yep. And I definitely, he's shown his talent absolutely through and through. That being said, will he continue to show his talent for Mercedes? Or will it be for potentially someone else or another racing series? I know we had this
that's
brief
a little
discussion.
interesting. We've seen a lot of back and forth with, I think, at the end of the year last year. Kind of weird to say last year already,
I
right?
know.
At the end of the year, I mean, at the end of the season, even he had wanted to quote unquote shore up another contract by Christmas, with Mercedes. And then there was more speculation coming out with, Russell and him and Bottas, and then I was seeing some stuff come across where the bosses at Mercedes weren't happy with negotiations and Hamilton for whatever reasons, and like maybe be like him asking for too much or his aura, his attitude, whatever. Right? They have issues, and now he's on the open market as of Friday, I think.
Yeah, well, he has not signed a contract in time to keep him as a Mercedes driver. He is technically a free agent at this point.
I
So,
don't know what to think of this, frankly.
if anybody wants a nobility as a driver, now's your chance for the
Yeah,
low price of what is it, 50 million plus compensation,
something like
something
that.
in that realm. Another
I'd be
great Formula
surprised.
Dank. I wish we're gonna have to start giving some people credit for these. Another great Formula Dank meme that I saw was Lewis asking for 50 million top car and compensation, and then there was a picture of George Russell. And he's like, all I need is $50,000 and a PowerPoint computer with PowerPoint. That's all I'm asking.
it's it's certainly an interesting time, even in the. I mean, and off seasons are never quiet for F1 to begin with, but I guess as of now, Mercedes doesn't have a confirmed second driver, um, and we don't know what's happening with Hamilton, which it's so weird to think that he might not be racing in F1 or racing somewhere else, or maybe he's done after 7 championships. I mean, I don't know. I don't have
I
an
would be
opinion.
shocked that
And
he wouldn't try to fight for an eighth,
one
just
more. Me
just
too.
to
I
say
I
that he's
expected to
no
see
longer
him at
tied.
Mercedes. I expected 100% for him to to see what he was talking about, that by Christmas that we were going to see
And it's
confirmed.
interesting that Mercedes is fighting back on him so hard.
Well, I
You
think that's
know,
part of like maybe he's X amount. There's caps in 2021, obviously,
I
so they
understand
can only
that, but
give him so much, and maybe I mean, for all his sternness, I mean, in good qualities, he can be difficult. Notably, he can be, he probably can rub people the wrong way, and I think the bosses at Mercedes have some issues with him. So who knows? Like we don't know what's going on, and we
yeah,
won't, frankly, until we know. It's really weird to say, but
yeah,
we don't know
well,
what's going on, and we won't know until we know.
right.
So
And
I
in
don't
the
know.
immortal words of Christian Horner, uh, the Sky News team will probably know before they even made their decision.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, we'll see. I would if I had my quote unquote way, I would like to see him at least for one more season, because I think they're the favorites to win again, assuming they guess they had Hamilton, right? Or maybe given George Russell, I'm talking the Mercs, right? Given George Russell's performance in his Hamilton's car, maybe they don't even need Hamilton to win another championship. But I'd like I think it'd be cool to see him win an eighth and then kind of be done, because frankly, I don't know if he's for a very long time if anyone would get close to, 7 or 8, frankly, championships for
well,
one driver.
and if he disappears, what happens to the viewership that he brought along?
Who knows? I will know when we know.
Exactly.
Well,
Well,
that's is that it for that's I think that's it for Sir Hamilton watch.
yes, I believe Sir Hamilton Watch is officially completed. We can now move on to Paddock Chat.
All right.
Now,
What do you want to hit first?
um, well, I think it's kind of going to be a little bit of an EV heavy episode. I did want to touch base
let's
on
hit
kind of like,
Formula. We're already on Formula. Let's hit Formula E stuff and move
yeah.
on into.
So we can start with Formula E, and then we'll move down the rest of our list here. Now,
You're
Formula
right. It's an
E,
E heavy.
yeah, Formula E. For those of you who are unaware, because it was essentially canceled when we at the time we
Yeah.
started this podcast. Formula E is the all-electric, essentially F1, but it's not F1 series. They are not F1 cars. They are Formula E cars. They are on their completely different platform, but they are an all-electric racing series that is entering its 7th season.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, I think so.
Is it 7 or 8? I want to say it's. I'm pretty sure it's set. Excuse me, 7. So
whatever it is.
Series or season 7 essentially. Now, it has brought a lot of technology into the world of EVs. We've also seen in documentaries like And We Go Green, where Formula E is a carbon neutral racing series. It's extremely good for the environment. They do not make an environmental impact wherever they're racing, as they bring their own equipment that is a biofuel generator in order to power the cars.
That you can eat or
Yes.
taste. Maybe I wouldn't want to drink a lot
I
of it,
probably wouldn't put a
but
lot
still,
of it in your body,
you can
but you
safely
could.
taste the biofuel on which their generator, on which powers the entire everything, runs. And granted, we saw, I think we were, you and I were tuning in from when, they needed battery changes and 2 cars per driver to last a race, and battery tech have had leaps and bounds to where one car can finish the whole race. I mean, there's the thing about with things like fan boosts and just innovations that are, trying to get fans more involved in the racing, but there's problems, and I hate to see it, and I hope it doesn't go away. But at the same time, there's something to be said that 2 of the oldest and largest manufacturers with racing within FE or were Audi and BMW have pulled out, and that's a big deal. Porsche, thankfully, still in. Got to get that dig in there. But BMW, I think, said something to the effect that they learned, granted COVID and everything else probably paid, cause of some of it, and things like we'll talk about later with sim racing and esports and all that. But at the same time, they said, I think in part, that they learned what they wanted to learn from it, and they're done, because it may be a question of
It goes back to the innovation side of it.
what's
How much can you
FE
innovate?
might be plaguing racing in general. I mean, I think it's no joke that Formula One clearly is regulated, and a lot of other series are regulated to all heck, stifles creativity, and it gets boring. I think it's hard, like any sport, right? They're struggling to bring in new younger fans. Formula One, that is, and a lot of racing series like NASCAR and big and small, right? I mean, if the big ones have problems, let alone the small ones, But to that point, you and I might just out of instinct and love and passion just watch the races, right, without any second thought. But a lot of times, people nowadays aren't watching for the sake of just watching racing. They're watching for interesting things to happen, new innovations,
and there's
new
no
technology.
real tradition behind it. I mean, look at NASCAR with you, and Formula One with me. I've got my grandpa to watch it with, and
and I don't. I mean, I might. Family, my grandpa still likes NASCAR, does not like Formula. He doesn't even like IndyCar, so he's not a big open wheel racer guy. But to that point, when you don't have something like that, where you're just watching racing for the sake of racing, and you instead watch it, and it's becoming this plateau of, and like BMW said, innovation comes, I believe, and always will. Innovation comes out of motorsport for the sake of innovation, for continued innovation within motorsport and to the consumer market. And to that point, like BMW, when in FE even, or any of the series, frankly, when you learn all that you want to learn, then what? Like, you're done. So I can't maybe fault BMW for their comments, and I can't help but wonder what does this mean for racing at large. But this is what's plaguing Formula E. Like, innovations have been realized, And where do you go from there? I mean, if you're done, you're done.
So then the question that I have is leading on from this is what is the innovation peak with electric vehicles? Once we figure out an electric vehicle that's sustainable and running, where does the innovation go? Is it range? Is it, essentially
ever increase range. I think
at what
you go
point?
one of two ways. You go ever increasing range, and I think it's one of three ways. It's it's economies of scale to further reduce the costs of electric vehicles as a whole, or it's ever increasing range. For this from the same amount of power or even less, at range efficiency, or its environmental impact at making the creation of electric cars, which, as those who look at it might not be so green with the battery, and the caustic materials and mining and everything else, making that even more green. But in my mind, I can't see other ways. And frankly, I don't see motorsport really fitting in on any of those, technically. Not
Yeah,
at least from an innovation standpoint, not like motorsport used to, where we
I
have
think we're to the
ABS and
point
we
where
have
we
disc
have.
brakes for motorsport.
I think we're at the point where we have reliable batteries that can hold a charge, can be recharged, and be durable. I'm not going to say, you know, long lasting, but durable in its lifespan.
Yep.
So that, that's what's raising the question. Now, a lot of these teams, BMW and Audi especially,
Mm-hmm.
are looking at other racing series that are looking into more hybrid, potentially going electric platforms.
Mm-hmm.
So is Formula E going to die
So,
out if DTM all of a sudden goes all electric?
yeah, and that's interesting because FE doesn't have the notoriety, we'll say maybe yet, or the marketing power, or of even, F1 or NASCAR or DTM. I mean, any of this stuff, right? And I'm wondering here that if you're not able to develop, if you're not able like manufacturers to join Formula E and develop new technology and learn new things, for your road cars and whatever, not much incentive to stick around any racing series, let alone Formula E. And to that point, you know, people know hybrids, right? I would argue that we're not where we should be yet, or ever going to be yet, with battery tech and electric
Well,
vehicle EVs yet. That'll
we're
continue to get better over
essentially
time.
10 years into the commercialized electric vehicle now.
Yeah, but in terms of
2001 being
the
the
batteries and in terms of range, like that's I still think in its infancy, and we'll see huge innovations in the future as technology gets better. We figure more and more stuff out, right? But to that point, you don't need, I would argue, unfortunately, Formula E to find that out. Once you have like right now, a legitimate solid foundation, well, there you go. Like you're done, kind of thing. Now
yeah.
it's about, put it this way, like if you've achieved 95% of the results that you're looking for, yeah, you're by no means done yet. But at the same time, it's no longer a game of the big things. And over time, it's a game of how do we eke out, how do we, squeeze out that extra 5% by focus, like laser focus on other things to continually tweak, It's not giant leaps anymore. It's small steps. And I think battery tech, quote unquote, is not where it's going to be like into the future. Like I said, we think it's a long way to go still, but we have the foundation. And not that Formula E hasn't helped to provide that. Like you said, once we even have the extended range, once we even have the better, more recyclable batteries, safer, more green, then where do you go? Like, who cares if a Formula E car can complete the race with 100 miles left or 600? Like, who cares, right? So
Yeah.
I think it's kind of sad, frankly. I don't want to see. I think Formula E is on. Like the thing I love about it most is it's on to something with carbon neutral, fully sustainable racing. It's on to something with much greater fan interaction than other racing series, even
I
F1. But
it's essentially, and even they have said it, it's essentially like Mario Kart for
yeah,
the
and
fans. I mean, you can sit there and with fan boost, if you essentially cheer loud enough on social media, your driver gets to drive faster.
Hmm.
I mean, there's no other racing series where you get to push the button to make the car go faster.
Yeah, and there was, I mean, the interesting thing is, I think we're ignoring here in terms of racing is there's also people behind this. It's drivers. Race car drivers aren't just, they don't just do it because, they want to drive a car fast. They do it because they want to grow and get better as drivers, and that's their job. That's what they love to do. And I think there's also something to be said if you have title manufacturers pulling out, or all these problems, then you can attract drivers, right? And then you can attract manufacturers, and you can attract fans, and you can, like, it's a vicious cycle. If you can't, teams in racing in general, Formula E or not, have to be able to get drivers and teams for that matter in the door. And I think that, like, you can see with young drivers being promoted to F1 on Formula 3 or Formula 2, as we talked about, they want a place to grow and get better. People want to see teams and people get better over time. They don't want to see the Mercs rule the sport for forever. And providing a place to grow is the easiest, I think, way to do that. But if that growth is essentially non-existent, or there is no growth anymore, well, then why join? It nullifies the point to manufacture a car and do this and that, and then thus you can attract drivers, can attract teams, can attract fans, and then you're done. If any of that tangent made sense, I hope. But that's just the way that my brain is going through right now, and it's, like I said, it's sad. I don't want to see Formula E go away. I think it's incredible, but it should go without saying that there is a huge uphill battle to continually fight for them. And I gotta say, I don't know if they'll be around, by the time I have kids and I'm, making them hopefully, and they eventually love it on their own, watch Sunday F1 races with me, and stuff like that. So I don't know, we'll see, but
Yeah, it'll
it's kind of
definitely
sad.
be interesting. So,
To that point, though, I mean, electric vehicles, we have gained some knowledge from Formula E, thanking them, and we have gained a lot of, battery tech improvements from Formula E. And to that point, we are in, like you said, maybe still the beginning years of the EV, apocalypse, maybe, depending on the way if you are for or against EVs. And at that point, in the coming year or a couple of years, there are a lot of electric vehicles beyond just the Chevy Volt and Tesla, anything hitting the market. Um, Again, I think, if I've said here, as I've said on previous episodes, I will someday wholeheartedly go purchase an EV when I can get the range and reliability out of it that I do out of a petrol powered car. But to that point, I mean, how many manufacturers are now coming out with cars in the next year or two that could totally change and shift people's opinions, frankly, of EVs? I mean, we got the Mach E. We've got, I think, electric Hummer that's supposed to come out, which I'm
right,
very excited for this year. We've got the Mercedes EQ line with their car, literally width of the car dashboard, like hyper screen thing. You've got, I mean, I think we were looking at an article just before this. I mean,
you got Audi coming in with their e-tron. You've got
and
um,
their Q4 e-tron and their e-tron GT. So not only
right.
like a crossover SUV, but like a sedan, fun car. Potentially the new Tesla Roadster. BMW has tons of cars coming with the i4, the iNext, whatever that thing is, the iX3. You've got potentially a couple years down the road, we've heard rumors of a Porsche Macan EV. New manufacturers like Bollinger. I can't know if I'm
Well,
pronouncing it correctly.
Bollinger or Bollinger, I can't remember. I mean, they make they've been making cars for a little while. They just haven't really been making them over here. Um,
Yeah. And I mean, to that point,
essentially, we
like the Aspark album, it's a hypercar, granted. Like the Aspark, you've got, what's that one that Tesla competitor? I just saw an actual car commercial for them the other day, legitimate commercial. So if they're doing commercials already, they have prowess behind them. What is the name of that brand?
I don't watch cable,
just-
so I actually don't
Let me
know.
find it real quick. Apparently Genesis is going to have an electric car debuting in the next year or two.
Genesis, the Polestar 2 is supposed to be coming
Polestar,
out.
yeah. Look,
The
is it
Nissan
no, it's not
Aria, I believe I'm saying that correctly, or yeah,
Lagonda. I mean, Aston Martin. We're
right.
not Aston Martin, but I mean, apparently maybe even Aston Martin tied. I
Aston
mean,
Martin adjacent. Volkswagen's got the ID4,
maybe
Volvo
another
XC40
Lotus.
Recharge.
We've got the Ford Mach E. We've got there is Lucid Air is in the California startup. Like the Apple car could be electric. I mean, it makes sense that the Apple car would be electric. I mean,
Well, Hyundai's got the Iconic.
Ford's
I
got
mean,
the electric. Ford and Chevy both with electric pickups potentially with the Silverado for Chevy and the F-150 for Ford. It's just
we're
who
gonna see an
knows?
expansion on Porsche's lineup. We're gonna
Of course,
have
with the success of the Taycan.
yeah, exactly.
I mean, again, and Mercedes-Benz, as you've already talked about, like their gigantic EQ lineup. I mean, it's both. Basically, I think more of the story is there's tons of vehicles, through like even 2025.
Mini is gonna have an electric Mini Cooper
from both manufacturers that are well known and ones that seldom ever heard of before, or have been in the background making, maybe even like supercars, and might make something a little more down to earth. I mean, I find it weird because I firmly believe that this is the future. I do. I firmly believe that. I do still think that this is early though. So many manufacturers are coming out with these, or saying they will, EVs, and I can't help but think, and you may not share this opinion with me, but it's too early. We're not. Like I think, like I previously said on this episode, I don't. We're definitely have a great foundation of platform for batteries and EVs, but I don't think we're to mass scale of economy, mass production, mass offering stage. I still think there's a lot to be, weaned out of battery tech and EV tech in general. Again, we're not, we're not to the horizon yet. Like we can see the horizon in the future, but there's still a long way to go. There's still, I think, many technological advances to be made with EVs. So I'm kind of surprised so many manufacturers have committed to not only developing, but apparently releasing cars soon. I would expect this, like I thought, frankly, when Tesla first started making the Model. I think that was the very first one. Right?
how could I forget about the Jeep Wrangler 4xe?
Or even, I mean that, like I fully expected for that to be like the only electric car until my kids had kids, kind of thing. Like,
well, yeah,
again,
it's one of those. Well, no, I totally understand. It's it's we. But look at the computer industry, and this is kind of a a segue into our next topic. But I mean,
yeah.
Look at how fast. I mean, it took us from 95 to 98 to get a new Windows operating system, and it's just easier because they're numbered. But versus Mac, which you could name off every national park and you'd have almost every version of
pretty much
OS X. But
I think where you're going with this, it's like, people, maybe I thought this, I'm thinking the same way now that people thought, in 95. I mean, that's the year I was born in, right? But then again, we saw like an exponential curve of like computer tech throughout, the years. It wasn't just a steady increase. It was increase, and then just shot through the roof. So maybe, I mean, that'd be awesome if we saw the same thing with EVs and battery tech and stuff like that. Maybe there's something to be said that as more people commit, as more, even racing series is one thing, but even more just manufacturers for consumer products commit, we'll see that same exponential increase. And, we'll have iRobot cars. Sorry, Zach, if you're listening, but iRobot, electric EVs going 200 miles an hour for 1,000 miles
with full autonomous driving.
Yeah, and sooner than we think. Frankly, I don't know. Like that'd be cool, and if that happened, fine. I'll get an EV. But then again, something we haven't really talked about, or I don't think you hear talking often, is all these people releasing cars. That's one thing. the battery tech and all this, and just the tech in EVs. But what about the infrastructure to support them? The power, the extra power, electricity, needed to provide the charging infrastructure. I mean, that's something that's not often talked about, but that's most certainly not there yet, frankly. And I think in any country, frankly, unless I'm missing one, but even in the U.S. or the U.K., like, you know, we need to cope with the extra increase in need for more electricity output from various methods, whether they be renewable, hopefully, or not. I mean, the charging infrastructure is not like, driving down the street to a gas pump every single 2 miles, Pardon me. I mean, that's another part of it. So,
Yeah.
well, not as much talked about. So who knows? But you made a good comment about. I'm just gonna kind of watch with bated breath and see where it goes. Frankly, but one thing that it's very interesting, even with the rise of COVID-19 earlier in the beginning of last year, and you said with computer tech, is esports and sim racing and just sim games in general, and what that's doing. I mean, you
Well,
were
and
telling me the other day.
it's interesting. So, I, and this is something that I've kind of wanted to talk about for a little while, but
Mhm.
essentially, there are games out there that are sim-like. There are games out there that have sim qualities. We see, essentially Formula 1 2020 or F1 2020, the video game, is a video game with a lot of sim-like qualities.
But not necessarily a fully dedicated
I
sim
I would not
simulation.
it's not what it
Flight sim.
essentially, well, or I'm talking more or less the simulators that the drivers used to train in.
Hmm.
We're not talking aerodynamic quality. They do very, very well, and Codemasters does an extremely good job at that game. They've
Yeah.
got the full backing and support of F1. Now, that being said, there are other things out there that are not games, that are simulators, where, for me, it's and I'm probably gonna catch a little heat for this, but Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020. I
Hmm.
have gone off the deep end, down to the bottom of the pool, and I am staying there because I love this thing. Um,
I've seen that in real life, and I'd like to think that I dip my toe in and I'm fully jumped in. I haven't yet been pulled down to the bottom of the deep end, but
it
it's
it
it's
has
kind
its
of
it has its failures. I am coming off of X Plane. I'm coming off of FSX. And my
but to
first.
that point, something as extreme like Flight Sim 2020, or even just Fanatec wheels and F1 2020.
The
It's
industry has gotten so overpriced and saturated.
That's true, but it's also kind of cool to see legit like Red Bull, and like again, like during COVID we saw you know
We saw
we saw
Banana Leclerc,
esports, and we saw
and
Banana Claire, and we saw it's not just a way to like another dimension to famous drivers, but you know kids and young adults, individuals who can become highly skilled in things like flight sim, or as close as we have to racing sims, for example, and get drafted essentially by legit, Red Bull, essential, for example, to race in a world esports of F1, or, you know, um, I mean, it's clearly a rise of like video games and esports over the years, recent, even since I went to college, and well, I mean, heck, even I think colleges now have esports teams, frankly, and which when I
there's
first
a
stepped
significant number of them. Yeah.
when I first stepped foot into college would never have frankly even thought that would be a thing, let alone it's commonplace now. And I still think this the future of sports in general, not even just racing. I would say the future is still wholeheartedly in live action, real racing, real sports, real football, real soccer, and football being soccer elsewhere outside the U.S., and American football and baseball and cricket and all this stuff, right? But I think the future is where eventually I do think esports will directly compete and maybe even one day take the viewership crown, and the draw, away from traditional stuff. Um, I think that day's a long way off for, professional sports, motorsport racing, but I think it will be coming. And frankly, I will personally look at it in terms of you'll never replace, for me personally, real driving skill, quote unquote, real flying skill, real professional ability. But I'm by no, athletic ability for sports. But am I in no way saying that those esports, and sim competitors don't have different athletic ability, mental ability, and that's not impressive in its own right. Um,
Yeah, absolutely,
I do
absolutely.
think that's a long way off. That direct competition between the real and the sim, kind of thing. That's what I guess what I'll coin for layman's terms here. But I certainly see that one day. I think within the realm of my life too. Frankly, the way things are going, based on how the world has reacted, frankly, in the esports world, and like you said, ever since COVID, you can't even get peripherals for flight sim, and everything's so overpriced, and
Well, yeah,
everybody
you
wants it
saw
all.
my struggle. So,
Yeah, I mean, I
for
think
our
it's coming.
listeners at home, I have a home cockpit, um,
It
and
is awesome.
just trying to get any of the bits and pieces to make that home cockpit functional,
Hmm.
has been
My
essentially near impossible to get anything at MSRP. Everything's inflated about 20 to 80% depending on the product right now.
Yep.
There's such a high demand for it, and we're going to see a lot of people who are still stuck inside. I mean, look at our neighbors to the north. Canada is going into their second lockdown, and it's
And I
going to
think
be
in
a
the
while.
UK as well, right? I think
Yep.
I was reading that they down
The
as well.
the UK, South Africa. I mean, we're seeing a lot of the world starting to get shut down again.
Still having issues
As
here in the States, not without it. I mean, obviously we have our own issues going on nowadays, given the current events coming, and that whether it's a lockdown, I think one thing people also aren't even talking about in the same frequency as just plain lockdowns because of COVID is the quote unquote, I mean, frankly, like the fear, even with the vaccine, people who aren't locked down but still choose to not go out of fear or out of respect for what's going on or for safety, or even the rise of potential, hopefully not largely, but the rise of mental health issues in people, you know, like and depression, and then also maybe shutting themselves in because of things like that, and they find refuge in esports and they find refuge with all these things online. I mean,
I can tell you right now, my happy place is, you know, virtually 35,000 feet above the Grand Canyon and just looking down amongst the scenery.
I
I
can't say
mean,
I'm quite there yet. Maybe my happy place would be sitting in front of a Fanatec, of a wheel and
uh,
pedals, and racing around the Nordschleife and
granted,
GT3.
I'm talking about my happy place in this current moment when I can't get to my real life happy place. But
To that point, I mean, I think I heard it best, and it's why I continue to say it here and even in my normal life. I don't think the world will ever go back to normal. I think the world will go back to something that is the new normal. And that
yeah,
new normal will continually evolve. And if anything, 2020 and COVID has accelerated, if not even accelerated, but just shown what that might look like with esports and EVs and, you know, anything, frankly. I mean, and motorsport racing troubles, and you could literally say everything has been affected, and it's really interesting. I mean, put it this way, I think you wanted to talk about this a little while ago, but maybe we save it. Even automotive behemoths, companies have been affected by, it's not just individuals anymore. The entire world, the way people do business and live and work and travel, everything will have changed, has changed, and I think will continue to change.
absolutely.
And
I
it's both
100% agree.
terrifying. I think it's both terrifying, and I welcome it with open arms because I'm one of those kind of people that I like seeing things evolve. I've always said that I'm an old soul, and I think I really should have grown up in the generation of my grandparents because they got to see televisions, from not existing to black and white tubes to 90-inch paper thin, flat screens on the wall. Microwaves and cars evolved from when a car, you knew what a car was by the way it looked or the sound it made going down the street, the era of chrome and like the model, like your guys' Model A, right? To
Mm-hmm.
cars now. I mean, motorsport racing, and essentially they got to see literally life and the world evolve and change through good times and bad times, obviously, right? And that's the way I look at it. Like, we're in bad times maybe right now, hopefully not for long. And to that point, I just like seeing change happen. And I think I might be able to live through that here in my lifetime, at least a little bit. Not to the extent of maybe my grandparents, but I welcome the somewhat fear, maybe, but the intrigue of progress. Hope I'm not getting too philosophical for everybody here, getting away from engines per se, but the engine of change, perhaps.
Oh,
um,
okay.
yeah, it's interesting to say the least. So
I definitely agree, and it's I'm interested to see how the platform changes. So
yeah,
and how much value we put into the simulated world versus the actual world of sports. So
hmm yeah, we'll have to see. I think I might have to. I think in 2021 I might have to get back into. I did. Well, I played in your cockpit obviously and flown, and it is addicting. I have raced on a pseudo sim setup with one of my buddies, and it's addicting. So I think even just for me, maybe 2021 will see me get into some form of esports, some form of e racing or sim flying and something like that. So yeah,
yeah,
it's I'm not sure what the year will frankly hold for Redline Resorts, the RLR podcast, for you or I, personal, professional, but we're only 10 days into it now, give or take, and got a long way to go. So I'm excited to see how the year unfolds, frankly, for everybody. So we
absolutely. Yeah,
hope that everybody has a great year, that they've had the best start to the new one that they have had, and that we can all kind of grow together, frankly, in the coming years. So with that, is there anything else that I might be missing here?
no, I think we've covered all of our topics.
Well, then that brings us to the checkered flag this week. We hope you guys enjoyed the new for our video audience and those listening as well. Please feel free to reach out to us with feedback as we are making changes and evolving. We'd like to hear input if you guys have any. Our social media handle is at Redline Resorts on all platforms. And our email, again, is podcast@redlineresorts.com. So with that, I'm Matt. That's Nick. Thanks for sitting in on our show this week, and take care, everybody.
Take care, guys.